Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. And today I want to talk about The Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. I received an ARC for this. Thank you. I can't remember who the publisher is right now, but thank you, whoever that is. And I was pretty excited for that because The Mirrored Heavens is one of my most anticipated releases of this year. And just look at that amazing cover art. What is there not to love about that? This looks sick. As soon as I saw that, like I was, my excitement factor for this book just went through the roof. It just looks so epic, and I'm happy to say that the cover art actually matches the story inside. The quality in terms of quality, because this story is pretty. It was a really good finale to what's been a very interesting series. One of the more interesting that's been published in recent memory, for me at least. So, bare bones, what was this all about? So, Serapio is now fully acknowledged as the Crow God reborn, and he rules over Tova. As a consequence of the Crow God being quote unquote ascendant, the a large part of the land is plunged into this constant eclipse, and as a result of the sun not being present, we have some issues where a lot of stuff started like it directly impacts like the weather, the climate and thing. We have crops that start to fail, we have rivers that get frozen up. It begins to become like this whole socio-economic issue because all these things have ripple effects, and people start to feel the squeeze as a result of it. As if but of course, this being epic fantasy, there's a whole bunch of scheming among the aristocracy of this world. There's a whole bunch of schemes in the offing, war on the horizon, all the good stuff we like. As if Serapia doesn't have enough to deal with consolidating his rule and dealing with these schemers, he receives a prophecy that promises to send him down an even darker path than the one he's taken so far, which was sick. As if this guy doesn't have enough to deal with, he has this on top of all of it. So that's pretty much it. That's in a nutshell kind of what goes down in this book. So for me, this was easily the strongest book of the series. I liked the first one, the Black Sun. I was okay with the second one, Favorite Star, but this one really managed to pop off in my mind the way the other two didn't. It just felt more vibrant. The characters were just more engrossing in terms of like the challenges and their character arcs and all of these things. Like Serapio, after he receives this prophecy, it kind of sends him into like this mini spiral where he begins to rail against just the path his life has taken and some of the things he's had to face as a result of it. We have Ciala, who is the Princess of Teak, who goes back home after rediscovering her magical ability, which is how the second book ended. And she has her own situation to deal with that begins and unfolds over the course of this book, and it really complements the overall story arc in a really cool way. She had her own trials and tribulations to face, and there was some interesting stuff that happened around her in particular that I really enjoyed, and it culminated in some pretty sick moments. Like I didn't expect stuff of that nature when I picked up this book. It was just wild to see though. I think the way her story arc kind of eventually unfolded is one of the things that just kind of amplified my enjoyment of this book. Like I love to see what she could really do when all the chains came loose in her case. And then we have Narampa, she has a little more mellow, a little more human kind of story arc that she goes through. She kind of faces this choice of continuing along the path that she's been continuing all along and choosing a simpler, a more basic life with someone. If you read, you know who. So she kind of faces this choice between duty and what she kind of wants and what she kind of gets to experience over the course of this book. So between the three, it's three different stories, and they kind of really interweave and complement each other in just these really interesting ways. Now, aside from that, Naranta also has a sort of journey that she goes on that, much like Ciala's, it complements a certain facet of the novel. So it all works out really nice. Together they kind of form these different pieces these different pieces of a story that you get to see the overall. You get like the crow's eye view of the situation, and they each only have their own single part that the others aren't quite aware of. It's pretty good. I think, yeah, I still think Ciala's story is my personal favorite of the three. But those are like the three main character POVs that we get. There are a number of others, like the Jaguar Lord, for instance, that they were interesting in their own way. They had like different things going on. In one in particular, we get quite a lot of backstory. We kind of see the events and the motivations that kind of led up to where things started in the first book. So that was kind of interesting to get that kind of fleshed out. But like these three for me, these three were like the central, the kind of like the backbone of this book, you could say. So the other thing I want to talk about is this choice that Rebecca Roanhorse makes with the plot and with the way that she executes this novel. She makes a very brave choice in what she decides to include and what she decides to have happen off screen. And I think it's a choice that might be a bit divisive for epic fantasy fans. When I first read it, I was like, maybe discussing that is a bit too much of a spoiler, but it's a pretty brave choice. It's an interesting choice. I'm still on the fence of whether I liked it or whether I would have preferred to see things play out differently, but it is a very interesting choice. And on one hand, it kind of shifts the book from being more plot focused, more event focused, to being a bit more character focused. So depending on your mileage with these different things, like if you just like to read a book for the sake of the plot and the characters are just set pieces that add to that, but you need to see things unfold in a really interesting and creative way, that happens here, but not in the way that you would expect, given that this is very much the epic fantasy genre, and things, we kind of have certain expectations with how books will play out, especially books of these nature where there's like war on grand scales with gods warring and gods scheming and that kind of thing. So like I said, it's a brave choice, it's a creative choice. I'm definitely going to need to take a little more time to mull over whether I think it works for me for now. What I will say is that it didn't detract from my enjoyment of the book overall. So it's not like a complaint or anything, it's just something I thought I'd highlight as a rather curious choice. When this book is eventually released to the public, which should be in roughly 2 weeks after I post this video, I would be very interested to hear if anyone's read it, what your thoughts are on how this ends. And I think that's going to be quite an interesting discussion topic of discussion. But yeah, there's that. The final thing I did kind of want to touch on is, once again, just the world building with this book. Like, this is very much a world kind of inspired by Latin and Native American culture. So like there's think like the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayas, that kind of like pre-Columbian, basically Latin America. And the gods are kind of more, from my limited knowledge at least, they kind of more are the archetypes you would find in like the native pantheon. So like the crow, the coyote, the sun, and these kind of things. So there's that facet. And then you have the teak, who like their the worship of the sea, I consider that like a bit more primordial as compared to these like what the other gods in the series, which are more like anthropomorphications of like different forces or different you kind of get what I mean. Like they're more animalistic, they're more human, whereas the sea is the sea. Like there's no it's much more elemental than is kind of the way I see it. The reason why I bring up these two is because between the two of them, we have the magic of this series. For me, it's just kind of dark. It's primordial. It's just strange, and it plays a part throughout this entire book because it's an undercurrent that goes throughout the book, and for me, it adds to the atmosphere of everything. Because the first and foremost instance of it is you have this situation that the Crow God creates over Tova. You have the storyline of the Jaguar Lord where it plays a big part. You ultimately have Ciala's storyline where it also plays a big part. Like it was just interesting. It adds a facet of the book that while it was present in the previous two, it wasn't quite as like glaring, I should say. Like it was there, but not to this extreme. Fittingly, given this is the third and final book and everyone's gonna go big or pretty much die. So I don't know, it just became something that I kind of enjoyed reading and just kind of like marinating in. So that's why I thought I'd just kind of discuss it. But all in all, I have to say this is like a really good book, a really good finale to what's been a very good series. The ending might be a bit divisive given Rebecca Roanhorse's choice of how she decides to portray events. But we have like great characters, great magic, great story that unfolds that given the end might or might not work for some people, which for me like I enjoyed. Which is the reason why this video can appear online. Like I only bother to review or react to or discuss books that I enjoy. So like that's pretty much it. Like we have pretty high highs when characters have like these just fulfilling moments. We have these terrible moments when they go through much darker events. Like this book just falls on like a spectrum of different things. I got hooked early on. I enjoyed it pretty much from start to finish, and if you're a fan of the series, I think it's safe to say that highly recommend it to check this out. Even if you've read the series and been ambivalent up to this point, this might be the book that kind of tips it into like epic tier for you because of some of the stuff that just kind of gets displayed and happens and unfolds. I know there's one particular event that when it happens, it's gonna gain this book a lot of fans, definite, and it surrounds the teak. When you get to it, you'll know it. But yeah, like epic fantasy that's not built off of a like pseudo-European setting is always a joy to read, and this book is no exception. So that kind of summarizes everything I have to say about this book. Thank you very much for watching if you've made it this far, and I'll see you next time.